Hi, my name is Elizabeth Freshour. I serve on the board of the Quad Chamber of Commerce. And our guest today here is the famous Maxine Clark of Build-A-Bear and Delmar Divine. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Okay, so you've led some amazing growth and change over the years from Build-A-Bear to Delmar Divine. What personal values have really guided you as you make big decisions?
Community. What are people looking? I'm a consumer-aware person. I've always been since I started my first job. Just nosy about the consumer. Why do they buy? What do they want? Why do they want that? What is missing? And how can we please them? Because that's where the money is. People want to buy things from you if they like what you have. So I've always been really functioning. I've also been driven by the brilliance of children and their ideas and their the sparkle that's in their eye. And I was one of those kids, and I wanted to be a million things before I became grown up, and I'm not sure I'm even there yet. There's more things to do. So how do we expose children to as many opportunities as possible while they're growing up as part of their experience? Experience is also really important to me. Like everything is an experience. When you check out at a grocery store, when you get on an airplane, how people treat you, the kindness they show you. You go, wow, that was really nice. And today it stands out because people don't do it as often as they used to. It used to be just something you took for granted, but now when you notice it. So they're all related. In the end, I say it's like a hug. A hug for a child with a teddy bear, or a hug for a neighborhood as we're building at Delmar Divine. But it's so many ways in which you can pass on something positive to another person, and then that brings you back in spades, just joy and business and a lot of other things.
I have to say, on a personal note, I was at the mall this weekend, and as we were walking past Build-A-Bear, a grandma and her two grandchildren were coming out of the store, and I couldn't tell who was happier, whether it was the grandma or the kid.
Yeah, well, that's the good news. It's probably both, and they really have a great time together. And I was there, and I missed you.
Oh, yeah, probably.
I was right there.
Anyway, just full of joy. It was amazing to see.
It is.
Was there a specific moment when the idea for Delmar Divine just clicked for you?
Well, Delmar Divine was inspired by the death of Michael Brown. I spent the month of August in North County of St. Louis when that happened, and talking to children and working with agencies that were working with the neighborhood. And I realized that a lot of things that my friends and I took for granted didn't exist 5 miles north. That's all we were distant. And how could we open up the doors and make everything that's so wonderful about St. Louis accessible? So people don't feel there's a red line they can't cross, or they can't get there because of the bus. And there are a lot of things that make transportation difficult, but more than that, it's just they don't know. And so we immediately created this product for the next summer called blueprint4.com, which is today in its like 11th or 12th year, and it's really popular. It's a free tool for parents to know what summer activities and camps exist for their children, whether you live in North County, South County, West County, or City of St. Louis. And there's over 10,000 summer camps that are listed, and many scholarships. And so that opened up a door, because those kids were sitting there with nothing to do, and now they also have access to things to do. And then I was working on our KIPP school. I was the board chair of KIPP at the time, and we were opening up a new KIPP school in the West End. And I was talking to one of the neighbors, and he said, you always go right. Why don't you turn left and look and see if there's a house that you might be interested in? We'll help you remodel that house. And I wasn't looking for a house, but I said, that's a good idea anyway. I love history. And so I started wandering around the neighborhood, and they were nailing the sign into this historic St. Luke's hospital that it was for sale. And so I immediately started looking into what could that be, because it was such a big building, and it was an eyesore, and it was hurting the neighborhood, not helping the neighborhood. So how could I turn it into something more positive? And it was sort of a blend of Cortex and many other things that I've seen around my travels, but basically a Cortex for nonprofits, but has housing attached, has retail attached, and it does the same thing, but in a way more collaboratively, because a lot of for-profit companies don't collaborate. They just do their thing. But in nonprofit work, you have to collaborate. You're always helping somebody, and there's somebody else providing the food, and somebody's providing the transportation, and somebody's providing the clothing. There are things like that you just can't avoid it. So do it better. Long answer to yours.
No, that's fantastic. So everyone talks about work-life balance, but it can feel kind of mythical. How do you think about balancing work-life and the things that light you up?
Well, I think you have to do work that you love. That's the first thing, because we all have to work. And when you work, if you don't love your job, it's really terrible. And I remember Terry Bradshaw, who was the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, when he got to be a radio announcer, a TV announcer, he made 10 times more money. But he said that playing football was his hobby, and if you could get paid to do your hobby, you're a really lucky person. Well, I was in the retail business for 21 years before I started Build-A-Bear, and I was paid to do my hobby too. I loved it. I loved every aspect of it, studying the consumer, opening up new stores, opening up new businesses. And when I had the idea for Build-A-Bear, that was just the icing on the cake of that retail career.
So follow what lights you up.
Yeah, I think most people don't even know what lights them up sometimes. When I'm working with children and teaching class in school, I say, what would you rather be doing than be in this class right now? And high school kids, like at a boys' Catholic school, they told me, I'd rather be playing basketball. I like to cook. I would be doing a track. It's okay. What kind of career could we make out of that? I mean, maybe you don't want to be a track star, but could you manage track players? Could you, be a sports announcer? Could you be a physical therapist? Could you be, there are a million things. And then they start thinking about it. They go, I never thought about that. Well, you're at 17, so you probably wouldn't have thought about it. But it's up to the teachers and the adults that are around you to help you find that something that you're joyful about and a career that can be satisfying to you.
Were there mentors at that phase in your life that helped you?
Oh, yeah. But you don't realize it at the time sometimes.
Sure.
My teachers, I grew up in the 50s and 60s in Miami, Florida, and we had a very diverse community. Diverse economically because a doctor lived across the street, a policeman, a fireman, a teacher, a basketball coach. And we all, played together. Nobody knew how much money anybody made. My father bought our house on the GI Bill for $10,500, so whole different cost of living. But my mother worked, and when I came home from school, one of the neighbors was always watching for me. And then she said, okay, she gave me know that she knew I was home, and then I'd go out and play. And so you have a village, and that village, and when I talk to people in St. Louis, they tell me about their village, whether it was in the Ville or in West End or Clayton or Webster or Kirkwood. Everybody has their village in St. Louis, but they talk about it with a different tinge, more about it puts you in your place rather than it gives you a connection. And in Miami, we always wanted to have that connection because I had relatives that lived in Miami Beach or in North Miami, and I said, oh, do you know my cousin? It's a whole different strategy. So I don't mind it when people ask me where I went to high school, because I didn't go to high school here, but my husband went to Clayton, and I say, well, I can attach to him. But I really like connection. And so I want to know not so much what people's social status or economic status is, because where I grew up, nobody knew or cared, is just that we have something in common. Do we like to read the same books? Do you have a favorite place you go to eat? What's your favorite pizza? And that's what it gives you that conversation. And so I'm a curious person. That's why I was in journalism. I'm always asking questions. And you get to who a person is that way. And then you get to know them a little bit differently than you might know them if you were just worried about what zip code they lived in. The zip code's too big for me. I like a street.
Yes.
What street
Yes.
do you grow up on?
What's a piece of advice that you got that has really stuck with you all this time?
This is a famous person gave me this advice, but I was very fortunate to know Oprah Winfrey to be on her television show, and that was for Build-A-Bear. And then she invited me to go with her to South Africa to visit her school and to open a Build-A-Bear store for just a few days for her Christmas gift to the children. And we were walking in South Africa. She wasn't wearing any fancy clothes or anything. We were just talking, and we were talking about legacy. What her legacy is going to be. And she said, she asked me about mine. I said, I'm building it, but I really care about people, and I want to make a difference. And so she said, it's not really what you have, it's what you have to give. And it's not about the money, it's about the time, it's about the heart, it's about the connections that you can bring. And she says, a lot of people think I give tons of money, but I don't. She says, I could put them on my show and they would get a lot more awareness. That's an easy thing for me to do. Or I would introduce them to somebody that I know that could help them. Or she said, but it's not because I can write a big check. It's because I have a big heart. And I think that really had a lot of impact on me. And I believe that she is the walking, living example of being a brand. And lives that brand every day. She's genuine. And I always felt I was a genuine person. Just be what you see is what you get. But and what you get's okay, but it's not perfect, and I'm 4'9", and I can lift big ideas. I can maybe not lift a heavy weight, but I can lift a big idea, not because I can do it, but I can inspire other people to do it with me.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to listen to you two talk. How incredible.
Oh, it was wonderful. We had a wonderful week. It was great. It was really great. She was an amazing person. And I made her a bear. Of course, she had a bear, her own bear, and she was startled that I made this bear this outfit that looked exactly like an outfit that she was wearing on the cover of a magazine that month. She says, "How did you do that?" Not that hard, you know. I said, but it was just really, it was really. It's fun to work with people like that. She's such a, she's who she says she is, and that's really what we all have to be. And I try to encourage young people that I mentor also. You know, you don't have to pretend to be anybody else. I mean, you want to gain skills along the way and knowledge, and you gain perspective and you gain poise. That's fine, but don't pretend to be somebody that you're not.
Show up as you.
Yeah, and honesty is really the best policy.
I just have one more quick question. Since we're here gathering as the Women's Network for the Quad Chamber of Commerce, why do you think having women-focused groups like this is so important?
Well, I think women are such a force of nature for our economy, not only because they create businesses that people want to buy the things that they sell or the services that they sell, but they are also in charge of the large consuming public of their family. You know, like that they make decisions, and more businesses should be focused on making sure that they're satisfying the female consumer, because she's going to make that decision for her family, for her parents, for her children who might have their own children, and helping them with that. And so there's we have a huge impact, and I don't think it's ever been totally realized. I think people hear about it and say 70%, but then you go to a car dealer and they don't necessarily treat you right, or you're talking to a home repair person and they look at you like you have no idea what you're talking about. But that's because women didn't used to own their own homes. We weren't allowed to, And so once we were allowed to, we had to take care of our own homes, and we were just a single person. We had to make sure we either have to call make sure we called the right repair person, but we had to know what they were doing and all of that. So I think we absorb that, and we're by nature, even if I don't have children, but I'm a nurturer, so if we are nurturing all the people that we come in contact with, then all of us can get better. And it's easier to do it with people that, look like you, that, can feel some of the things that you feel, that have your frustrations and then your joy. They have grandchildren, you have grandchildren, you have a business, they have a business. Women are more comfortable sharing those personal things with each other. Men aren't so much as comfortable. They should be more comfortable, but they aren't. It's over, golf maybe, or sports. And I like all those things. I watch golf and I love sports, and my husband loves sports, and we get to do a lot of those things together. People are always surprised that I know so much about basketball, or I know so much about baseball or football, because I really love sports. I love watching coaches, because I think all of us in some way are a coach. We're meant to coach someone, and besides ourselves. And I love watching how coaches treat their players and how they motivate them. And what I'm really studying right now is Josh Schertz at SLU. He is a second year as a coach, and they're having this incredible season. And he's a real human, and he's small. So, he's not a tall man. And so when I see him next to his players, that's how I feel in life. And my mother said, "You're not small, you're under tall," but I don't mind that. I just think he doesn't mind it either. And so to them, he's important, and he's like their dad. He's a dad to them. He coaches like a dad. And I think that is really his secret to success. That might be the success for all coaches, but his team, the kids he recruits are more humble. And so he's lifting them up. And they're doing a phenomenal job. And I think it's all his style. They have talent. He's bringing that talent to work. So we can learn a lot from all the people that we meet. I've had the good fortune to meet some famous people like Oprah, Martha Stewart, Joe Montana, lots of people along the way. Because I asked to. Because if I saw them in the room, I would go up and say, "Hi, I'm Maxine Clark." And then they don't necessarily know about Build-A-Bear, but once they do, they kind of make that connection. And just because I want to learn something from them, talk to them. It's not to become their best friend, but and I think that we have that special talent when we get together in groups like this, in business groups. There's so much power in that, because it's tough to be in business today, and everybody has a problem. Maybe you don't want to brag about that problem, but you want to solve it. And what ideas do people have? Like Novel Neighbor just saying she's opening up. She has a bookstore over in Maid and Delmar, and they're using it for event space, which they have a big event space. Well, that's fantastic. I love that. And now how do we get more of the neighbors? I said to her, how do we get more of the neighbors to know you're there? Because I didn't even know.
Right.
And I'm a customer. I go to the Webster bookstore.
Right.
So Like how can I know? I can just go right down the street. So I think there's a really a lot of opportunity for collaboration. And what they call in the retail space collabs, like that's kind of a collab. And then what else? Other businesses could we bring on there? You know, even if it's for 3 days or 4 days or a month, you know, a small pop-up, people can do pretty well on that. And gee, maybe I could open up a full-time store at this one. I think just sharing. We're more about sharing. I have had so many people at the nails place where I go to get my nails done that know me and know I care about education, and they'll say, "You've got to come to my son's elementary school. He has the greatest principal." And that's what you introduced me. And I go there and I learn so much. And I'm thinking, we have phenomenal schools in St. Louis. You don't have to go very far. If you live in a district that's not great and you want to see what great looks like, you can go to Kirkland and see what. In one school, it is fantastic. 2 schools, 3 schools. They're all different. They're all neighborhood kind of schools, but they're doing something really hands-on. Lots of hands-on activities are going on. And yet in the city of St. Louis, they don't do that because I don't think they have parents that can bring that hands-on activity to the classroom. But we can, businesses can, we can participate. And I think there's a lot of really great activities that you don't know until you see it in action. And teachers are my heroes. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for teachers. So I think there's a lot we can contribute. We think about what made us better and go backwards and then take it forward.
Oh my goodness, so much wisdom. Thank you so much.
Lots of life experience.
Yes, yes. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you
your time.
for wanting to talk to me. I appreciate that. And if a little bit helps, I'm glad to even do more. If people want my information, you can give them my email address, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that people have.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.